Now to start off, I'd like to put this little disclaimer out there. I love Dark Souls 3. I've played it to death, and I'm going to keep playing it for a long time. Also, Hidetaka Miyazaki, you are a genius, and I love you, and I hope we can still be friends. With that out of the way, here are the things I would do to improve Dark Souls 3. Feel free to violently disagree with me in the comments. Alright, the first thing I would do is remove bonfire warping, at least until the later parts of the game like Dark Souls 1 did. As it is now, the constant warping just breaks up the game flow and ruins the pace. Whenever you reach a new bonfire, which will be often, you sit down, warp to Firelink Shrine, cash in your souls, warp back to where you were. Not very fluid. Aside from that, it ruins the sense of scale the game is trying to create. When I get to Anor Londo, I want to be able to turn around, look up at Lothric Castle and say, man, look how far I've traveled to get here. But it doesn't feel far when I can just sit down and warp all the way back in 5 seconds. Think back to your first time playing Dark Souls 1. You've made it to the bottom of Blighttown. You wish you could upgrade your weapons or buy some more purple moss, but those things are long behind you. You've come too far, worked too hard to turn around now, and you're not leaving until you've done what you came here to do. Then you make the long, treacherous climb back up to the sunlight, and with relief you finally return to the Firelink Shrine and begin preparations for the next leg of your journey. Now imagine what it would be like if you could just warp out of Blighttown and back down again whenever you wanted. Yeah, not as fun. Now, obviously, if you couldn't warp in Dark Souls 3, then you wouldn't be able to get back to the Firelink Shrine, which means you wouldn't be able to level up or upgrade your weapons. Luckily, there's a pretty simple solution to this problem, and it brings me to the second thing I would change to improve Dark Souls 3. Let us level up at every bonfire again. The fact that they removed this at all still kind of baffles me. If you have to have the Firekeeper do it for lore reasons, that's fine, just have her pop up whenever you light a new bonfire. In fact, why don't Andre and the old lady show up as well? Then there's like a little party at every bonfire. It would make them all feel kind of special instead of just feeling like a bunch of really awkwardly implemented checkpoints. In fact, let's jump off from here into the third thing I would do to improve Dark Souls 3. Remove like 75% of the bonfires, because Dark Souls 3 has way too many bonfires. In Dark Souls 1, finding a new bonfire was an emotional moment. All your struggles were justified, your hard work rewarded, the stress of carrying around a ton of souls finally relieved. In Dark Souls 3, you trip over one every 5 minutes. Part of the problem is that they felt the need to put one in every boss room. But even without those, there's still quite a few that just don't need to be there. But with the bonfires being rarer, they'd all feel like unique little safe havens for you to rest and prepare. Now you're probably thinking, with less bonfires, they would have to add in more shortcuts. But in reality, the game already has plenty of shortcuts built in. They're just useless. Like that one shortcut from Crucifixion Woods to the Abyss Watchers, which at the moment exists for literally no reason at all because there's already a bonfire on the other end. So the fourth thing I would do is just connect the Smoldering Lake to Irithyll Dungeon, because for one, it feels like it was supposed to do that anyway, 2, it would offer a different path to Yorm the Giant, and finally it would make the Smoldering Lake feel like less of a big elaborate dead end. Thing number 5. This one might sound weird, but what if when you descended from Lothric Castle wall, the only way back up was to walk? What if the bridge guarded by the Asylum Demon actually went somewhere? Like to a new area with enemies you have to fight through to get back up to the castle. And only then could you work your way to the top of the castle and finally face Lothric and Lorien. Unless, of course, you went up there before you descended the castle. Which brings me to my final change. Number 6. Let us go up and fight Lothric and Lorien from the very beginning of the game. As it is now, you can go all the way up to the Dragon Slayer armor. But once you get past him, there's just a dumb locked door standing between you and the Grand Archives. And the key for the door doesn't appear until you've beaten all the other lords. And I mean literally, it just appears in front of the door for no reason. Why? Why can't I go fight Lothric first? Maybe the designers really wanted Lothric to be the last boss? But he's not the last boss, he's just one of the 4 keys you need to get to the last boss. I cannot understand why they made it this way. Such an arbitrary design decision seems to fly in the face of what made Dark Souls 1 what it was. So yeah, this is pretty much just to make it more like Dark Souls 1 list. But Dark Souls 1 was great, and I don't seem to mind grabbing some of the characters and locations from that game, so why not some of the design mentality as well? As I already said, I love Dark Souls 3, but there's a reason people always say Dark Souls 1 was better.